There's a spark that finds its way into a special kind of man. It lights a fire deep in his soul that tells him yes you can. He can get out from behind his desk and go try something new. Driving up the side of the world is just the thing to do, 'cause he's driven by a dream.
I'm Rick Péwé for Gone-GPN. Today we're here with Chris Collard from Gone-GPN with a unique vehicle that you may or may not have seen, but Chris, you got a lot to tell us about this one.
Yeah, it's a good one, Rick. For the folks that don't know it, maybe you're new to the Jeepin' world, this is one of Mark Smith's original 5 CJ-7s from Expedicion de las Americas. So,
and what is Expedicion de las Americas?
Well, Mark Smith, who was known as the grandfather of Jeeping, he started with a group of friends in Georgetown, California. They started the Jeep Jamboree back in 1953, and he had this dream of doing a project that was almost the unobtainium, and that was going from the tip of South America into Tierra del Fuego to the tip of North America to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. And this was like a 21,000 mile project, and included the section, you know, they got the Pan American Highway, you've heard of that? It goes from the south, it goes up and stops in Turbo, Colombia. From the north, it comes down and stops in Yavisa, Panama. And there's a section in between where it's never been completed. It still hasn't been completed. It's just 60 or 70 or 80 miles of dense, lawless jungle. And so these guys, Mark and a group of 12, they went through the Darien Gap in this vehicle and 4 others just like it.
So it's the Darien Gap.
It is the Darien Gap.
Part.
That is the Everest of off-road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you could drive through the Darien Gap, you are the greatest.
Well, I think these guys were the greatest. I mean, there's been very few people that have done it.
That's the thing. They succeeded.
They did. And they've just had a few groups that have actually tried it. Some have been successful. You remember the Chevy Corvair? That was a stunt in 1961. Those vehicles, did they make it? They say they made it. I don't know, because there's one of those Corvairs is about 500 meters from the Colombian border. I've sat in it.
Right. And the other one?
Well, village chief told me the other one is out in the jungle somewhere. So who knows if they made it. But then you had the Trans-Darien Expedition. That was a Jeep and a Land Rover. And then you had John Blastridge Snell, the British officer, and about 200 British soldiers.
But Mark did it with six Jeeps?
5 Jeeps.
5 Jeeps, and how many people?
13.
13. That sounds so epic.
It is epic. It's one of these things, and I have history because I used to be the UPS driver in Georgetown, and ended up working with Mark on events around the country. And in 1998, they decided to put together a 20th anniversary trip to South America with this Jeep and 2 others, the originals.
Right,
and
original Jeeps.
There 3 original Jeeps, stuffed them in a shipping container, had the roll cages off, windshields down, tires off. It's so you can get like 4 vehicles in a 40-foot shipping container, right? Stacked on top, right? So I was like super fortunate. I found out that they were doing this, and I was able to get on with that. So I rode with Brian Franzia and one of the other Expedition Jeeps. Yeah,
I would have loved to have done something like that. You know, I travel all over the place on epic Jeep adventures.
Yeah,
that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, it was really a special part of my life. And then, Rick, I kind of lost touch with some of the guys, but Shane Grimm, whose dad owned this Jeep, he passed away, and he gave the Jeep to Shane, and I lost touch with him.
Right.
And like 3 months ago in January, Fred Williams, Dirt Every Day, our good friend Fred, sends me an email with this Jeep on Craigslist. What?
Yeah, this is not a Craigslist vehicle.
This is not a Craigslist vehicle. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I, due diligence. I was on a Friday night, and I tracked him down on Facebook.
You stalked him?
I stalked him. I did stalk him. Found him on Facebook. I sent him a note. Said, hey Shane, this is Chris Collard. Blah blah blah. Call me.
Yep.
He called me on a Sunday night, and Monday morning or Monday afternoon, I was down in Santa Rosa with a trailer, and I bought it.
Thank goodness, because that's like keeping it in the family.
And I feel it is.
Hell yeah.
And I had really nice words from Kevin Arnold, the other families that own the Jeep still,
Yeah.
they're like, wow, really glad that you got it.
Right, because none of those other guys are ever going to let it go.
Nope.
Theirs.
No.
But all 5 exist, right?
Yep.
And now you saved this one.
Pretty cool. Yeah, we've really had a fun time just driving it around and having people that remember Expedition de las Americas.
Right.
People will come up and they're like, is that one of Mark Smith's Jeeps? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that's pretty cool, but why don't you tell me a little bit about the Jeep?
Yeah, so honestly, it is a CJ-7. It's not modified. I mean, it's got an engine, it's got a transmission, it's got a transfer case, it's got axles, and I mean, it was what they sold. It's a stock CJ-7.
That's right. I mean,
Mounted.
the winch was aftermarket.
Yeah, they put the Ramsey winch on it. They pretty much local. I mean, Georgetown's a small place at the time. They didn't have big budgets. A lot of homemade, racks for the winch, for the rear tire. The cage was from Johnson, the place called, back in the day, Johnson Enterprises. Made roll cages in Sacramento.
What about the hood? That's not a factory Jeep hood, is it?
It is a factory Jeep hood.
That's been highly modified?
This is the original hood. This is the original hood. So it was. Oh, you're talking about the dent?
Yeah, the dent.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this graphic
No, the
across.
graphic is absolutely incredible. Start with that.
Okay, so if you look at the top of this hood, you got a map of the Americas, and this is basically South America, North America. It starts down here in Chile, and so after they went all the way across South America, we come to again the end of the Pan American Highway, and crossed the Darien Gap and followed it up through Panama and Nicaragua and El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico. Jumped over on the ferry to Baja,
Which is really cool.
Which is way cool,
Yeah.
and then all the way up to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska.
So basically 2 epic parts of this trip. One is the entire trip. No way, no how is that not epic. And then a subset of that is the Darien Gap, which in and of itself is epic.
Right.
So
Yeah, Mark had planned 90 days because it took the British Army like almost more than 90 days. They actually got into what they call the wet season. There's a dry season and a wet season, and the wet season is impassable. Everything's flooded. The dry season is just less wet. It still rains. There's still a lot of water and there's still a lot of mud, but it's just less wet.
So on the rivers, can you cross with winches, or do you have to make some sort of a raft?
You've got to make some sort of a raft. And they would get, I think it's called a piguada, and that's the dugout canoe that the Kuna Indian make, and they would basically put the bridging ladders across the 2 canoes, put a vehicle on it, and ford the rivers.
That's incredible.
These guys were badass.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And they had a badass Jeep.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the Jeep too.
Again, 78 CJ-7 has 69,580 original miles on it as of today. But they're hard miles.
So it's a straight 6, 258.
Yeah, 258 straight 6, T18 transmission with the 6.32 to 1 first gear.
Right.
So it's later model,
So it's
right?
granny low force.
It is awesome. That low first gear is.
Oh, yeah.
Cruising around Moab this week, I was like, man, I'm loving this first gear.
Well, especially with the Dana 20 transfer case, which is only 2 to 1.
2 to 1,
Yeah.
right.
And that's a 30 front and a AMC 20
And
rear.
a 20 in the back, right.
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 And this here has the disc brakes, of course, because it's a 78.
78.
Yeah,
Right.
so that.
And it didn't come with power steering. They ordered it specifically without air conditioning, without power steering. They didn't want anything extra that could go wrong.
Right.
And so these guys were, man, talk about Armstrong.
Yet it has a smog pump on it
That was done after the fact, I think.
because it lived in California.
Well, so in 1998 when we did that trip in South America, Al had put a 4-liter fuel injected in it, an upgrade. Well,
The later model engine.
yes, that one died while we were down there. So when they got back, they put a just carbureted 258 back in it. So I don't know if that smog pump is original, but it's required, and it passed smog recently, like since I got it.
That's awesome in California.
It is. I was just so happy. I was hugging it. I'm like, oh, you passed smog.
Thank you, girl.
You drive you on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But you got your hand on an interesting piece of history right there.
All this undulating terrain.
Does that look stock?
No.
No.
Well, on some of my Jeeps, yeah, but I modified it.
So the story is, Rick, is that, the Darien is very mountainous, up steep hills, all covered with jungle and trees. down the other side. So they were doing a lot of winching up and then winching down. They had to winch down embankments into the rivers because they're literally vertical. And at one point, a winch cable broke, and the Jeep went over and down the hill like a marble in a pachinko machine.
Giant orange marble.
Yeah.
And wasn't this one of the only ones that did not have a rack on the roof?
That's correct, yeah. And as the story goes, Al just didn't get to Georgetown in time to get that rack made. So the others did have the rack was for the bridging ladders. Yeah.
So that was actually probably pretty fortunate he didn't have that. It would have ruined all the gear and the ladders and everything else.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, tell me more. This is so fun to see a vehicle.
If you look down the side, Rick,
you've
got, first of all, Argentina to Alaska via the Darien Gap. Deep graphics down here from Guatemala, from the various Jeep dealerships they stopped in or they got help from.
Yeah, Jeep Guatemala, CA.
Yeah. And when they got these vehicles, that was 1978 and 79 was the Expedition, but they got them, and Jeepers Jamboree is in July, so they got them. They basically were up on the Rubicon before they went to the Darien Gap. And the dash plaques are on the dash.
And you can even see some graphics on the hood from past Jeepers Jamborees too, where they probably put some stickers on over some of the graphics. But still, it's so cool that they left the dent. That's history.
Yeah. I mean, they had these things packed with pretty much everything they would need for 30 days in the jungle.
Right, living,
food,
they
bought rice from the locals. They had to bring fuel in, on the rivers for gasoline, and then hump it across the jungle. You know, jerry cans on I don't know what you call it, but like a yoke, I guess.
And then, of course, as we said, it went back in what year?
1998.
1998. Yeah. So you've had a lot of history with some of these Jeeps.
I'm excited, man. I'll tell you, everybody, I'm just like, my wife said, I've never seen you so excited about anything in a long time. And what was really cool out here is when Mark Allen, he's head of exterior design for Jeep, and Jim Morrison, who's vice president of Jeep, and you, and me.
Yeah.
We all got in, we went driving around in it. It was like...
It was great. We're out here in Moab, Utah. Where were we? We're Monitor and Merrimack. We were just tootling around Courthouse Rock, right? Yeah. It was grins ear to ear on all four of us. We were just having fun. Yeah, that was another epic journey.
Another highlight of the week.
There you go. So now what? What are you going to do with it?
So that is a good question. The idea is that we're going to do a full mechanical restoration on it. So we're going to leave the dents and the patina and the graphics the way they are, because that's part of the history of the vehicle. It hasn't seen a lot of love in the last 20 plus years. So we're going to go through it mechanically. The axles, the transmission, the differentials, the engine, just make sure that it's everything below the sheet metal. We're going to give it some love.
Right. And it's not like it's worn out or not working, because I'd take this right now and do Poison Spider right behind us.
Yeah, it's driving.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. Well, but if I wanted to go from tip to tip again, I think that's wise to go through everything.
You know, and I've got, I reached out, this is the thing about that vehicle, and the people that really know off-road and know the history of Jeep, is I reached out to a number of different manufacturers. It's part of the restoration. Like Bestop always made the canvas tops. So Bestop was like, yeah, we'd love to be a partner on this and help with that restoration. I'm looking at companies that were around in the 70s or actually had products on the vehicle back then. Krager wheels. If you look underneath here, there's some really old rusty Rancho shocks. Rancho is going to provide some shocks for that.
With the right logo?
Yes.
Period correct?
Actually, we have a picture of one which we rendered, and we're going to make new stickers for it. Period correct. With the blue, remember they used to have the blue?
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
Right.
So you're really not going to restore it, you're going to conserve it.
We're going to conserve it.
Yeah.
We're going to put some new leaf springs on it. Superlift, of course, a company that's been around since the 70s. They're going to provide some replacement springs. BFGoodrich jumped in with, I don't think they had their mud terrain out yet. They had their all-terrain out.
Yeah, they did.
But BFGoodrich provided some tires. Tuffy Security. I've got an old beat-up Tuffy Security box that I'm going to put in the console. They weren't around, but I'm going to fudge it on that one because it's such a cool product. It's already
a good product and it looks right.
Omix and Rugged Ridge. I mean, they've got a crazy cool inventory of old new stock for Jeep stuff, and then Rugged Ridge has all kinds of great products. So they're going to help with basically like OE replacement seats,
Right.
Because these are not original at all.
No.
And the mounts and the seat belts and things that
Right.
things that are just worn out.
And when you go through the axles and stuff, if you need axles and ball joints and all that, that's where you're going to
Absolutely.
source that. That's how I was looking at the winch. It's huge.
It's a monster.
It is. It probably pulls 1 million pounds.
But if you look at this, wasn't this like the same unit that they use as a PTO?
Oh yeah,
And then they modified it for an electric drive.
right. It's still a worm drive unit, and
Yeah.
it's super strong. It's not really quick, but you're not really caring about that unless, of course, people are shooting at you, which they do down in the jungle.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
You can't worry about
You
that.
got to talk nice.
Yeah, talk nice in Espanol.
Yeah. Sí, sí, sí.
Sí, sí, sí. So after it came back,
Yes.
are you going to try and conserve it the way it was then, or are you going to leave the after stickers, like from all the Jeepers Jamborees?
For the most part, everything on the sheet metal is going to stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. We're looking at some of the places where the metal is cracked and they welded them shut
Yep.
and fixed them, but they never did the body work. Well, that's because it's just a good old Jeep at that point.
How many vehicles these days could you actually weld the body back together?
Well, that's true. Yeah. But it's strong, it's solid,
Yeah.
and it's great to drive, let me tell you. I'll give you my driving impressions for...
There's no embargo on this.
No
Go right
embargo
ahead.
on this.
Yep.
You know, but you figure that this is nearly 40-some years old, and it
42.
drives
43.
great. And you know the bushings and everything else have to be worn out.
Yep.
But you just drive down the road with one finger on this nice, large-sized steering wheel.
Yeah.
The seats,
Steering's
even though
light.
wrong, it's
Right.
comfortable, it bounces along. I mean, it's great.
And the crazy thing is, Rick, is that it has oil in it,
I hope.
but there's no oil underneath. It's not leaking. I mean,
Are you sure there's oil in it then?
I checked everything before I left.
That's problematic.
Changed the oil. I pulled it in my new shop with a new clean concrete floor and a cardboard underneath there, and I'm like, came back the next day, I'm like,
There's no oil?
is there oil in here? I'm like, yeah, there's oil in it.
Man,
Check the diffs. I'm like, okay.
that's not normal. But that's cool.
Very, very cool.
No, it's going to be a great project. And we're going to cover it.
We are, absolutely. Yeah, so you guys can just stay tuned because we're gonna document all of the restoration, conservation of the Jeep on Gone-GPN over the series of time of like the next year, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And finally, you're going to put it in a museum?
Well, my own museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
this
then
is. What's the question you're trying to get to?
You got a map already. Right? You have a map of what you need this Jeep to do. So, that's what I'm saying.
So I think what you're asking is, will it ever see the Darien Gap again?
There you go. Third time's a charm.
I don't know. What do you think, Rick? Should we do it?
I'm in.
You're in?
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna need to get a couple more Jeeps like this. Maybe not originals. But,
Maybe not originals, but yeah, okay. I'll start looking for 7s.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
We
see.
can do that.
That'll be the mystery question. Does this Jeep we call EDLA, EDLA for Expedition de las Americas.
Yep.
We name him after a pretty female. Yep. So time will tell if EDLA finds her way back to South America and the Darien Gap. I
That's
don't know.
right. That's the question.
Yeah.
All right. Let us know what you think. I'm Rick Péwé.
I'm Chris Collard.
We're on Gone-GPN. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
There's a spark that finds its way into a special kind of man. It lights a fire deep in his soul that tells him yes you can. He can get out from behind his desk and go try something new. Driving up the side of the world is just the thing to do, 'cause he's driven by a dream. A rainbow is his guide. He gets his strength from Mother Earth and a brilliant story light. He's driven by a dream, crossing rivers, climbing trees, to turn the heartaches and the joys into treasured memories.